Tonight, conditions ease in New South Wales and Victoria as drizzle dampens the fire grounds. Shots fired from the Brisbane River in the second attack on a popular bar. A front-end loader used to rip an entire ATM from a Townsville shopping centre. And Hollywood stars roasted at the Golden Globes. Good evening, Lexy-Hamilton Smith with ABC News. The federal government has committed $2 billion to what will be the mammoth task of rebuilding entire towns devastated by the bushfires. Over 2 years, a national bushfire agency will coordinate resources, providing support and services to those affected by the blazes. But some people on the ground say more immediate relief is needed.
From the top end of the country, help is on its way. But in the middle of a disaster zone, providing relief is rarely easy. Cockpit vision from this RAAF aircraft shows how treacherous rescue missions can be when even the best laid plans to evacuate Mallacoota thwarted by Mother Nature.
It's not possible to fly in or out of Mallacoota, but we believe we may have up to another 300 people to move from Mallacoota over the next few days.
More than 400 Army reservists have already been mobilised out of the 3,000 who received the compulsory call-out on the weekend. And from Canberra came an impassioned promise of help.
Whatever it takes, whatever it costs, we will ensure the resilience and future of this country.
The Prime Minister's announced the government will commit $2 billion to rebuilding bushfire-ravaged towns over the next 2 years. The National Bushfire Recovery Agency will be responsible for rebuilding roads and infrastructure, mental health support, attracting tourists back to fire-devastated regions, rolling out 20 Service Australia pop-ups to help bushfire victims access services like Medicare and Centrelink. But those who've been affected by the bushfires say what's been available until now is far from enough.
I'm disgusted in the way that the government's handling it.
Robert Provenzali lives with his partner, toddler and 8-month-old baby in Batemans Bay. They've been without power for a week and without an income for 2 since the fires stopped his work on the local bridge upgrade.
There's tens of thousands of families that are going to need some sort of income in the next few weeks or maybe even months.
Social media posts also paint a picture of life in the wake of the bushfires with no support. One mother, who's being discharged from Canberra Hospital with newborn twins, writes,
"We are not able to get home to Eden. If you have a unit available, let me know."
While this man's entire workplace was destroyed by the fires, he simply says,
"Let me know if anyone has any work."
Disasters of this nature throw up any number of extraordinary challenges, and some of them are very difficult to deal with.
While $2 billion sounds like a lot of money, the challenge for the government now is getting that to people who need to pay bills, feed their children and find a place to live. Eliza Lachon, ABC News, Canberra.
All blazes across New South Wales and Victoria have now been downgraded to a watch and act or lower. Although rain has eased conditions, it's also hampered backburning efforts as authorities prepare for more severe weather this week. While it's been confirmed 2 people died in last week's fires in Victoria, today there was some good news. The 4 who were unaccounted for have now been found. But the number of homes confirmed to have been lost in that state sits at 200, with that number expected to rise to more than 300 when the assessment teams complete their work. Victoria's Premier has announced $50 million to further aid recovery efforts and to complement the new agency announced by the Prime Minister. Danny Tran reports.
Hundreds of homes have been razed by Victoria's raging bushfires, and rain has brought some relief for all creatures, great and small. The cool change has also allowed many to see up close what they've lost, and for business owners who stayed to assess the long-term damage.
This is our 3rd year of drought. What was tough is now disastrous.
76-year-old Rob Fraser also stayed to defend his home and B&B.
It was Third World War with explosions going on.
What was an inferno last week is now smoke-shrouded and wet. But this drizzle is far from enough to douse the blazes still burning across Gippsland and the state's northeast.
To put this fire out, we would need something like 200 millimetres of water.
The conditions are also making some things harder. The Defence Force has joined firefighters on the ground, but the rain is delaying backburning. The earth is also more slippery for heavy machinery. The poor visibility cancelled air evacuations from Mallacoota today.
There's no point going out in the weather at the moment because, to be honest, we'd fly out there and then come back.
Which also happened on Saturday, when it was flames and smoke that prevented flights landing over the weekend. About 2,000 people have been rescued from Mallacoota by boat and air, but 300 people are still waiting to get out. The area of land burnt is staggering. More than 1.2 million hectares have already been ravaged, and authorities remain concerned these fires around Corryong could merge or link with blazes in New South Wales to create a mega blaze when temperatures rise later in the week. The devastation has become so much clearer here on the fire ground. And to that end, the Victorian government has announced it'll spend $50 million on a permanent bushfire recovery agency responsible for rebuilding schools, roads and communities, not only damaged by this fire, but future blazes.
We are going to see longer fire seasons, and we are going to see, we should just be honest about the fact we're going to see more and more fires, more and more damage. And the recovery for everyone in the region will take years. But despite the devastation, many are committed to rebuilding. Danny Tran, ABC News, Sarsfield.
In New South Wales, an 8th person is now confirmed to have died during the fires and 1 person is unaccounted for. Thousands are without power and supplies of food, and water is running low.
The Navy has arrived on the south coast. HMAS Adelaide sits in the bay just to the south of the town of Eden. But in the background, a reminder that this part of the world is still under threat. A local woodchip mill burns, taken over by the border fire.
When we were, off the coast and in the bay, the conditions with visibility were horrendous, and it truly brought forth, the intensity and the severity of the fires that were in the area.
The Navy has brought with it 300 tonnes of supplies.
Where we are now is normally the aircraft hangar. We've converted it into Hotel Adelaide at the moment, ready to receive evacuees.
Officers are liaising with authorities on the ground to figure out where they're most needed.
The other thing that we have a capability of doing is, with our aircraft, is identifying those hotspots and identifying and doing damage assessments as well from the air.
But some locals are questioning if the Defence Force should have been called in earlier.
A bit late, really. Seriously, the armed forces should have been in place in August when this was all starting to unfold.
Jenny and Arthur Robb were evacuated from their home in nearby Kaya on Saturday. They're still unable to go home, and there's no word on when this roadblock will be gone.
It's just an emotional roller coaster, really. You go from grief to anger to fear. You worry about your family.
The heavens have opened above Eden, but not enough rain has fallen to put the border fire out. Despite conditions, firefighters are working on.
We're here, so we thought we might as well do something that's helping the people in town a little bit, maybe give them a little bit more confidence and, just help them on their way, but they've got a big job in front of them.
Locals here in Eden have been through a harrowing few days, under the threat of fire and under a blood orange or simply black sky. Some are still down here at the wharf, near the water. Others can't get home. In Bermagui, roads are beginning to reopen, but locals have to boil drinking water and there's still no power.
I want to acknowledge Essential. They're working around the clock to get the power back on. It's great that we're starting to see food trucks turn up into Bermagui.
But in the interim, frustration is growing.
If these politicians don't get off their arse and do something and lead, don't follow, lead.
Weeks into this crisis, patience is wearing thin. Jonathan Hare, ABC News, Eden.
In South Australia, it's feared nearly half the wildlife on Kangaroo Island has been wiped out in the bushfires. Many rare species, including bees, birds and marsupials, could be near extinction, with their habitats changed beyond recognition. Casey Briggs has more.
Peter Davis has had his business ravaged by fire.
We have a community spirit here on Kangaroo Island that is not burnable. It hurts. It hurts to see this, and I don't want anyone to go through this again.
He thinks he's lost up to 400 of his 1,000 beehives, and some are still under threat. But even those that have survived may not be able to produce honey.
If we can't get them onto a resource where there's flowers, where there's nectar and pollen for them, the queens will stop breeding and they will just decline in numbers.
The industry is still counting the losses, but already estimates a quarter of the island's hives are gone. And it can't be easily rebuilt. Bees can't be brought onto the quarantined island, as it's home to the most pure strain of Ligurian honeybee in the world.
There are a lot of birds in the burnt-out trees here, more than we've seen in most of the hardest-hit areas. For wildlife, these bees and what's left of the honey might be one of their only sources of food.
At the KI Wildlife Park, koalas are being nursed back to health, but it seems they're the lucky ones.
I'm guessing well over 50% of our koala population's gone.
It's estimated 50,000 live on the island, a rare population without chlamydia. But it's not just koalas the locals hold grave concern for.
Glossy black cockatoos, the habitat's gone. The Kangaroo Island dunnart, the habitat where they were only found, that's wiped out.
Wildlife has always been one of KI's biggest drawcards, and despite the devastation, locals are begging people to make plans to visit soon.
Don't give up on Kangaroo Island, because we're not going to give up.
Casey Briggs, ABC News, Kangaroo Island.
Meantime, the reprieve in the weather has allowed farmers to begin the devastating task of assessing their stock losses. Across New South Wales, Victoria and South Australia, the number of animals killed by these fires already exceeds 15,000 and it's expected to climb. Bridget Rollison reports, and a warning, you may find some of these images in this story distressing.
In the scorched paddocks of Australia's southeast, the nation's livestock and the farmers who care for them are suffering.
This is quite possibly the hardest thing I've ever had to do.
When fire ripped through Adelong near the base of the Snowy Mountains on Friday, it burned almost everything in its path. Today, Andrew Reynolds faced the gruesome task of assessing which of his stock could be saved, and found 31 of his cattle had to be put down.
I haven't been impacted, from fire like that before, and, it would just be a terrible way to die.
Farmers are urgently digging pits to dispose of dead animals, and the federal government is providing 100 vets to urgently assess stock.
If they need euthanizing, we'll do that. If they need to record they need feed or water, we'll do that.
This map shows the number of cattle and sheep being farmed inside the massive firegrounds affecting the nation's southeast. As many as 2.3 million cattle and 8.6 million sheep will potentially be affected. That makes up 9% of the national herd and 12% of Australia's sheep flock. But the stock losses are just the beginning. For those animals that were evacuated or managed to survive, feed levels have been devastated, and dairy farmers have been pouring out thousands of litres of milk because trucks just can't get in to pick it up.
We've got obviously still a lot of road closures, and there's difficulty getting transport around, both for the delivery of feed but also for the delivery of product back out.
The long-term implications for Australian farmers will stretch over many years. But Andrew Reynolds is just trying to get through today.
I might try to put on a happy face, but I was having a little cry in the corner occasionally. Don't worry about that.
For now, the future is difficult to see. Bridget Rollison, ABC News.
A second team of Queensland volunteer firefighters has been sent south to help with the bushfire crisis. More than 50 rural fire service volunteers left for New South Wales this morning to replace another group of Queenslanders deployed last week.
They'll assist with backburning operations and keeping communities safe down around Sydney and in the Wollongong area as the weather conditions start to heat up over the next few days.
On Wednesday, 25 North Queensland volunteer firefighters and staff will travel to the south coast to help relieve fatigued crews. Australia's military involvement in Iraq has been thrown into jeopardy following the assassination of Qasem Soleimani. The Iraqi parliament has passed a resolution asking its government to throw out all coalition troops, including 300 Australians. Middle East correspondent Adam Harvey reports from Beirut.
Qasem Soleimani's body arrives at Tehran airport before dawn, as Iran mourns a national hero. He's receiving a send-off normally reserved for heads of state. Crowds of more than 1 million in his home city of Avaz, and vast numbers in Tehran. The implications of his death are being felt across the Middle East. In Beirut, the killing has energised supporters of the militant group Hezbollah.
Trump now, because he is a fool, he is attacking Iran, he is attacking our leaders, and this is never and will not be acceptable.
Hezbollah is such a powerful and dangerous force, partly because of Qasem Soleimani. He helped build it. Killing him has made this volatile place even more unpredictable.
Hezbollah's elusive leader says US soldiers, not civilians, will be the targets.
The suicide attackers that got the Americans out of the region are still present, and they're now in greater numbers than they were in the past.
In Iraq, MPs voted to evict foreign troops, including 300 Australians. The government is not bound by the vote, but it's an indication of the depth of feeling among Iraq's Shia population. Of more consequence, Iran's leaders have now declared they will no longer be bound by a promise to limit uranium production. Donald Trump tore up the deal in 2018, reimposing sanctions and beginning the swift deterioration in US-Iran relations, which now threatens to explode into open conflict. Adam Harvey, ABC News, Beirut.
A popular Brisbane bar has been the target of a shooting from a boat floating past on the Brisbane River, just weeks after being firebombed by an arsonist. Police investigating won't say whether there's a connection between the two incidents.
Draped in police tape, a sense of deja vu at Mr Percival's. The bar closed for business and teeming with police after several shots were fired in the early hours of this morning.
Petrified. We had no idea. That's just frightening.
Around 2 a.m, a female staffer was alone inside, closing up for the evening. Police say the shots were fired from a small boat cruising past along the Brisbane River. Up to 4 people may have been on board.
Oh, sounds like somebody's got an agenda against that bar, doesn't it?
It was just before Christmas when the popular Brisbane bar was first targeted. Police releasing this dramatic footage of the moment a man approaches and throws a firebomb through the door. No one was injured and the damage was minimal.
That's not the sort of thing you expect to have under the Story Bridge.
Police are yet to lay charges over last month's firebombing and wouldn't comment on any possible connection between the two incidents. The bar's owners have vowed to implement tighter security. That's despite already having more than 200 cameras operating in the Howard Smith Wharves precinct. CEO Luke Fraser issued a statement saying safety is our top priority and thankfully no one was injured. There were no guests inside, however there was a small amount of damage to the venue.
We're working with management in the area, particularly the licensed premises, to ensure the safety of the public.
It's a city, isn't it? These things happen.
Other patrons say it's enough to deter them from returning.
Yeah, 100%. Especially with kids.
Brittany Klein, ABC News, Brisbane.
Queensland police are searching for a brazen thief who used a front-end loader to steal an ATM from a Townsville shopping centre. CCTV shows the vehicle plough through security bollards at Burdell just after 3 o'clock this morning before ripping the machine off the wall in less than a minute. Police don't believe any money was removed from the ATM, which was abandoned with the front-end loader on the grounds of a nearby primary school. It's estimated around 100 million patient vital signs are recorded by nurses every year in Australia, taking anywhere between 5 and 10 minutes every bedside check. But new technology being trialled in a small Queensland hospital could revolutionise the practice, saving nurses time and patients their lives.
Since being diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma 18 months ago, Alyona Gritsenko has spent much of her time in and out of hospital. When she developed an infection after a stem cell transplant, she had to be woken every hour to have her vital signs checked.
It made it really hard to sleep and also to rest in the midst of having fevers and going through the treatment and the side effects themselves. So I think it was really difficult kind of to manage all of that when you're so sleep deprived.
I worked in cancer and palliative care for 10 years, and waking people up was probably one of the worst things of the role.
New technology being trialled at the 20-bed Kilcoy Hospital may put an end to what has been one of nurses' core responsibilities, taking and recording vital signs. Patients are being fitted with wearable body sensors, which will automatically record their temperature, heart rate, oxygen levels and blood pressure.
Patients have commented that they no longer have to be woken up to have their vital signs checked. They can sleep through the process.
This technology will be a massive revolution for nursing.
The wireless monitoring technology has been in development for a decade, but it's the first time it's been put to the test by an entire hospital. It could save nurses time and hospital bottom lines.
By our calculations, there are over 100 million patient observations performed each year in Australia.
Patient vital signs are monitored continuously by the technology, and the alarm is raised when there are signs of deterioration. If the trial goes well, the technology could be used more widely, even allowing patients to recover at home while still being monitored by hospital staff.
In the first few weeks after the stem cell transplant, you don't know how you're going. You don't know, is this bad enough that I should call someone and ask, or is it okay?
It could also revolutionise rural medicine.
We could have a command centre located in a metropolitan facility where the specialist staff are sitting, supervising and looking after and viewing patients that are located in a rural facility.
The trial will run until June. Daya Clark, ABC News. Now to the United States, where Australia's bushfire emergency has made its way to Hollywood, dominating this year's Golden Globes. Actors Russell Crowe and Margot Robbie were among a swag of stars who used the awards show to call for climate action. National Arts reporter Michaela Boland has more.
The Golden Globes, always known for the glitz, the glamour and the gags.
This is the worst thing to happen to cats since dogs, right?
It was the bushfire emergency down under which stole the show. Russell Crowe won for his portrayal of the disgraced Fox News founder Roger Ailes. Yet, the star chose to remain at his fire-threatened property.
We keep this truck ready and prepared in case things get crazy, and all the stuff you need for fighting fires.
He sent along this message in case he won. Make no mistake, the tragedy unfolding in Australia is climate change based.
He wasn't the only Hollywood heavyweight to pay tribute to the unfolding tragedy.
Australia, I love you. My heart goes out to everyone who is suffering in Australia, all the animals that we've lost.
I wanted to do a special call out to the volunteer firefighters who have been at the centre of battling the climate disaster that is facing Australia.
As for the gongs, it was a story about Hollywood which took home the most gold.
I had a fantastic cast. And it's not just the BS fantastic cast, it was a fantastic cast.
Olivia Colman won gold for playing the Queen.
For the last year, I feel like I've been living someone else's life, and now I feel like I've definitely won someone else's award.
War epic 1917 and popular TV drama series Fleabag were also big winners, each taking home 2 trophies. Nicole Kidman, Margot Robbie, Cate Blanchett and Toni Collette were nominated, but all were overlooked. Michaela Boland, ABC News.
And later this hour, more on the unfolding bushfire crisis across Australia.
I'm Michael Rowland. Join me at 7:30 for more personal stories of heroism and heartache amid this summer's national bushfire disaster. We'll also analyse the federal government's intervention in the crisis, mobilising troops and spending millions on more water bombers. Why did it take so long? That's coming up.
In tennis, Sam Stosur has defeated former world number one Angelique Kerber in straight sets to advance to the second round of the Brisbane International. The 35-year-old was in good form early against the German, eventually taking the first set in the tiebreak. It was a similar scenario in the second, the Australian winning 7-6, 7-6.
And she's done it! Big win to start off 2020 for Sam Stosur.
That was yeah, a great match from me, and love playing in front of this crowd. You guys gave me tons of energy, so it's nice to get a win and start the year like this. It's amazing.
And Australia will progress to the quarterfinals of the ATP Cup after results went their way overnight. They take on Greece tomorrow night. Australia has completed unbeaten summer of Test cricket with an emphatic 279-run win over New Zealand in the final Test. The Australians dominated with the bat and the ball, David Warner making 111 runs in his second innings and Nathan Lyon claiming 10 wickets for the Test. The Kiwis came with high hopes and left with many questions after being dismissed for a disappointing 136 runs on day 4.
The Australians were miles ahead on day 4 with 243 runs already on the board, but were determined to drive home their advantage. For Joe Burns, it was a chance to firm his place in the Test ranks after a lacklustre summer.
So the second 6 of the day for Joe Burns.
The aggressive partners cruised to 100, while workhorse Neil Wagner needed a breather. The Black Caps took the time to review Burns' wicket and brought him undone on 40.
And hitting the wickets.
David Warner teased the Kiwis' bowling attack, bringing up his 24th Test ton. Marnus Labuschagne added 59 runs to his impressive streak, enough for skipper Tim Payne to declare. Tensions were high among the New Zealanders, staring down a 416-run chase. And barely off the mark, the Kiwis caved.
That's taken by Nathan Lyon, who's dancing around as he should be.
The party was just getting started for Lyon.
Yeah! Oh, a little touch, was it? What an absolute beauty.
Sending debutant Glenn Phillips off for a duck.
And he's given this one as well.
The visitors were in all sorts of trouble and Pat Cummins got a piece of the action.
Oh, yeah, it's a peach. That's a peach.
Sidelined skipper Kane Williamson watched on in horror.
Is it going to land in the gap? Oh, what a catch! Jake Atkinson has taken one of the great catches at the SCG.
While Lyon reached new heights, taking his 10th wicket for the Test.
Been very special to be a part of and to win all tests at home and be pretty clinical in all wins. It's been very, very impressive.
The number 2 ranked Test team falling apart.
After that first Test match, they put us under pressure session after session, and we were never able to reverse it.
Australia's 279-run victory wrapping up a perfect summer. Chloe Hart, ABC News.
Now to the weather, and there is a cyclone heading for northwest WA. Tropical cyclone Blake has formed and is tracking as a Category 1 system, likely to reach a Category 2 as it crosses the coast late Tuesday or early Wednesday. Some good vision here of rainfall and expect potential gale force winds due to that cyclone. Minimums finally a little cooler in Birdsville at 37. Thargomindah at the hottest town in the state, and temperatures low 30s right along the coastal fringe. In Brisbane today, there was an early shower. Brisbane topped 30, 29 on the Gold Coast and 33 for Ipswich. On the satellite, that shows heavy cloud ahead of Cyclone Blake on the northwest. Keep an eye out on the Bureau as they forecast some wild winds, they're telling us, of over 100 kilometres an hour. It's already dumping heavy rain offshore around lunchtime. It was tracking at 9 kilometres an hour. Interstate, it's 34 in Darwin tomorrow, high winds and 37 for Alice Springs. Still plenty of smoke haze in Canberra and Melbourne, and 31 and sunny for Adelaide. Queensland's outlook, showers expected in the Gulf and on the peninsula, falls possibly of over 100 millimetres on the north tropical coast. Forecast north, so it's going to be wet in the north tomorrow, showers right down the coast from Cooktown to Mackay. Inland in the central west and Channel Country, a chance of showers, Gladstone partly cloudy and 31, a top of 38 for Roma. In the southeast, partly cloudy along the coast, 37 in Gayndah and Dalby and 36 for Warwick. In Brisbane in the southeast, 20% chance of rain for the city, a top of 31 degrees, 29 for Redcliffe, a little bit of cloud about at Coolangatta and 33 for Ipswich tomorrow. On the bay, northeasterly winds 10 to 15 knots, seas below a metre. And now looking for the week ahead, we've got 31 right up till Friday, a bit of rain about on the Sunday, but Saturday about 32 degrees. And for Ipswich, some cloud most days again, with showers also expected on Sunday over the weekend. And that is ABC News for now. Thanks for watching from all the team, but stay with us for a 7:30 edition with Michael Rowland. Good night.